Hello all, I welcome you to this module. In today's module, I will be giving you a few tips to improve your reading skills. Let's get started. Let me start off with the question, why is reading skills important? The first and foremost reason is that reading improves your vocabulary, and vocabulary is most important when it comes to language learning. By actively reading or observing the text, you also observe the structure of the sentence, which means in the process you can improve your grammar. So enhanced vocabulary and good grammar leads to better writing and speaking. And this is going to be particularly useful if you're going to use English for academic and business purposes. Let me come to the first subsection of this module, that is the rules for comprehension. So the first and foremost rule is to read out loud, at times particularly the important passages. So if not the entire book, you can read out important passages. So reading out loud also means slow reading. So in the process, you read with inflections and punctuations, which means there is going to be better understanding. Also, as you read out loud, you also get to hear what you read, which means listening is embedded in the process of reading out loud. So, simultaneously you read and listen, and therefore your grasp of concepts and keywords and the structure of the sentence is going to be better. The second rule is to read a book with a pen. Why? Because every time you come across a keyword or a summary statement or an important passage, you can mark it. So that once you are done marking, once you are done reading the book, you can always go back to the marked important sections of the book or the passage. The third rule is to do a quick scanning of the book or the passage for key or important passages or points. And while reading, do not start by reading word by word. Do a quick scan and find key terms and summary statements. Read the entire paragraph or passage before you highlight something. That's the next rule. So before you highlight, this is only when you highlight, okay? Before you highlight, you make sure that you have read the entire passage, because quite often the first sentence might come out very striking, but not necessarily that the summary statement is the first statement. So some passages can be tricky, so to notice that, make sure that you read the entire passage before marking the important points. The fifth rule is to pay attention to summary words. What are summary words? Therefore, as a result, hence, in short, in conclusion, etc. are summary words. So these words are followed by the author's note or the author's conclusion of what the article is all about. The next important rule is to circle keywords or difficult jargons in a passage. It's always important to mark keywords or jargons. If you mark jargons and if you don't know the meaning of that jargon, try to interpret the meaning of that from the context or from the sentences situated before and after those words, and try to infer meaning from the context. The next rule is to circle keywords or difficult jargons in a passage. By doing this, you know what is important in the passage. And when you underline a jargon, you also know what you haven't really understood. The only technique that you can apply to solve the problem of jargon is to read the meaning from the context. The seventh important rule is to paraphrase what you read. If you're not able to paraphrase or translate it in your own words, it means you haven't understood the paragraph. So make sure that you paraphrase what you have read. The final important point is to interact and engage with the text. What does that mean? That means to critically read a piece of text. So ask these questions. Who is the main character? What issue does this article address? What is the author trying to tell you? Does she make compelling points? Does the author show any bias? So, look out for answers while you read a book or a passage. Now, coming to the next subsection of this module, that is reading comprehension for tests. I am going to give you a few tips that's going to be useful for you when you are writing a test and it involves reading comprehension passage. So, the first thing that you need to do is budget your time. These are the important questions. Look for the number of passages. How many passages are given in the test? How many exercises need to be solved? How much time do I have? So, give less time to the short or easy passages and give more time to the difficult and longer passages. And make sure that you time yourself and stick to that plan. The next process involved is reading the passage. So, to start off with, you should skim the text. What is skimming? Skimming is reading the surface of the text to understand the overall message. So, how do you skim a text? You look out for headings and subheadings. Why? Because it helps you understand the subject of the text. Then, read the first few lines of each paragraph. It's always the first few lines or the last few lines that summarizes the paragraph. So, you can look out for summary statements in the first 2 lines or the last 2 lines. Now that after skimming you have a rough idea of what the passage is about, what do you do next? Let me substantiate this point with an example. So, we will do a small paragraph comprehension to understand this point better. So, this paragraph is about philosophy of education. So, let me read out the first few sentences of this paragraph. It is marked in red. Philosophy of education is a label applied to the study of the purpose, process, nature and ideals of education. And if you further read, you will notice that the first sentence of this paragraph, which I read out, is a summary statement of that paragraph. Similarly, in the second paragraph, many educationists consider it a weak and woolly field too far removed from the practical applications of the real world to be useful. This again is a summary statement of the entire paragraph. So, now that after skimming you have a rough idea of what the passage is all about, what do you do next? You then go ahead with the easiest exercises. So, make sure that you read the questions and fully understand them. So, after understanding the questions, look for keywords or synonyms of keywords. This will help you identify the answers. Let me substantiate this with an example. So, here is the same reading paragraph. Now, the question is, according to the passage given below, is the following statement true or false? Educationists consider philosophy a weak and woolly field. So, what are the keywords in this question? Educationist and weak and woolly field. I have underlined the key terms. So, now you are going to be searching for these key terms in the passage. So, where do you see that? Yes, here it is. The fourth line says, many educationists consider it a weak and woolly field too far removed from the practical applications of the real world to be useful. So, your answer is true. Now, the third important point is to read the text and find the answers. So, once you are done with skimming, once you identify keywords and you answer easy questions, then it's time for you to get to the hard and difficult questions that require you to read word by word. So, you need to read word by word, moving your fingers through the text. So, in the process, you will be able to find out the answers. Now, let's suppose you get stuck with a jargon, or for that matter, a question. You're not able to find the answer to that question. What do? Do not spend more time on one question or a single jargon. Whenever you get stuck with a jargon, try to infer the meaning of that jargon from the context. Look out for meaning from the surrounding information. For example, the word woolly here. I do not understand what the word woolly is. What do? I read out the entire sentence. So it says, many educationists consider it a weak and woolly field too far removed from the practical applications of the real world to be useful. So I infer that woolly in this context does not have a positive connotation, and it's something similar to a weak field, which means I can infer that the meaning is related to something vague or unclear. So you don't get stuck with a single jargon or a single question. Do not spend, it can eat up your time, so do not spend more time on a single question. So move on to the next exercise, and then if you have solved all the answers, and you can later come back to that difficult question and try answering that question. So what are the challenges we face while reading? So all of us would have done comprehension passages at some point of our lives in exams. So my experience is that one of the biggest challenges is lack of rich vocabulary. So you often get stuck with jargons. The second problem is that I might get stuck with certain questions, or I don't know how to go about. So there's a mismanagement of time. So which means there's a lack of practice. So once you address these two issues, lack of rich vocabulary and lack of practice, you will get better at reading. So now coming to the third subsection of our module, how to improve your reading skills. First and foremost rule, which is the golden rule, is to read more and read widely. Read more and read widely. Read and read as much as possible. Read newspapers, read magazines, read books, read articles, anything that comes to your hand, please read. Read something you like in the beginning. So if you're not an ardent reader, make sure that the first few picks are always on those topics that interest you. For example, if you love history, choose history books. If you love films, pick books or articles related to films. If you like sports, pick up something, read something from the sports section of the newspaper, or pick up books related to sports. If you are interested in current affairs, make sure that you read editorials, newspaper editorials, etc. So read something different every day. So as you gradually progress, make sure that you read different kinds of materials and different genres touching upon different topics. So while reading, it is also important that every time you come across a new word or a jargon, you note it down and review that vocabulary later. So for that, what do? You keep a notebook and a pen handy while you read. And then coming to the final point, practice makes reading perfect. Yes, read as much as possible, read as many times as possible. Read more than once, and what happens is you get acclimatized to the jargons. And now when you pick up new jargons, when you pick up new words, try to use that in your daily speech with your friends or family. Now, coming to the final section of this module, we have critical reading as the fourth subsection. What is critical reading and why is critical reading important? So, to read critically, you need to follow these three strategies. The first one is separate facts from opinion. What's a fact? Fact is an information that can be proved true through objective evidence, and facts can be checked for accuracy and thus proved true. For example, If I say that China is the most populous country in the world, it's a fact because I can substantiate my argument with data. There's a lot of data supporting that statement, and therefore it can be called a fact. However, an opinion is a belief, judgment, or conclusion that cannot be objectively proved true. Here is an opinion. The best treatment for thyroid is homeopathy. So there is no consensus in the scientific community that this is true. It's my opinion or it's my belief that the best treatment for thyroid is homeopathy. Someone might feel that allopathy has better treatment options, or Ayurveda does better in treating thyroid. So what needs to be understood is that a critical reader should be able to separate facts, the writer's opinion. Also note that much of what we read is a mixture of facts and opinions. The second strategy is to detect propaganda. What's a propaganda? Propaganda is an information, especially of a biased and misleading nature, used to promote political cause or point of view. Who uses it the most? Politicians, advertising agencies, and salesmen. So part of being a critical reader is also to recognize propaganda techniques for all the emotional fluff they are. So the most common type of propaganda technique is transfer, in which products or candidates try to associate themselves with something that people love or admire. Politicians trying to use national symbols, flag for example to invoke patriotism, or famous film actors to transfer a love and liking for the actor to the politician. So this he uses to promote their political campaign. So in the process, what happens is that our feelings that we have towards the actor and the patriotism stirred in us by the national flag will get transferred to the politicians who get us to vote for him. The next strategy is to recognize errors in reasoning. What's a valid point? A valid point is always supported by a rock-like foundation, so there's a solid support there. Whereas a fallacious point is something that's based on a house of cards that offers no real support at all. Let me substantiate that with a few examples. So one common fallacy is called circular reasoning. So in which the supporting reasoning is really the same as the conclusion. So it means it is illogical. For example, Mahesh is a great swimmer because he is wonderful at swimming. What's the supporting reason? He is wonderful at swimming. And what's the conclusion? Mahesh is a great swimmer. It's illogical because we still do not know why he is a great swimmer. So no real reasons have been given. The next technique or the next common fallacy is called false cause. A fallacy that oversimplifies the issue. This is to assume that because event B follows event A, event B was caused by event A. For example, every day I eat paratha for breakfast. One time I had a dosa instead and there was a major earthquake in the city. There was earthquake in the city not because you had dosa. So this is an example that helps us understand false cause. So make sure that while you read, you recognize these errors in reasoning. You look for valid points and you look for fallacious points. So to summarize, in this lesson, we have learned that critical readers evaluate an author's support for a point and determine whether the support is solid or not. Critical reading involves the following three abilities: separating fact from opinion, detecting propaganda, and recognizing errors in reasoning. So with that, we come to the end of this module. I will meet you with a different module on a different day. Until then, stay safe, happy learning. Bye.